My dear friends, let me begin with a simple question. Have you ever noticed how some people over the age of 60 seem more peaceful, more content, and surprisingly happier than many young people today? You would think that youth brings happiness, energy, opportunities, dreams. And yet, so often, it is the elders who carry a quiet smile, a calm mind, and a heart free from unnecessary stress. Why is that? Today, let us explore 6 beautiful habits that make people over 60 happier than younger generations, and perhaps, if we are wise, we can adopt them much earlier in life. Habit 1. They let go more easily. A young man once approached an elderly teacher and said, "I cannot sleep at night. My mind is full of anger. Someone insulted me years ago, and I still feel the pain." The old man smiled gently and handed him a glass of water. "Hold this," he said. The young man held it for a minute, no problem. 10 minutes later, his hand began to ache. After an hour, it became unbearable. The teacher then said, "The weight of the glass has not changed, but the longer you hold it, the heavier it feels. Your anger is the same." People over 60 have lived long enough to understand this truth, not just intellectually, but emotionally. They have carried grudges, regrets, disappointments, and they have felt the exhaustion of holding on. Over time, they realize that letting go is not losing, it is liberating. In youth, we often believe that holding on makes us strong. "I will never forget what they did," we say, thinking it gives us power. But in reality, it ties us down. It drains our energy and steals our peace. Older individuals, through repeated experiences, begin to see patterns. They notice how anger affects their health, their relationships, and their inner calm. Slowly, they make a conscious choice to release. Letting go does not mean they were never hurt. It does not mean they approve of what happened. It simply means they refuse to let that moment control the rest of their life. They stop replaying the same story in their minds. They stop seeking validation for their pain. Instead, they shift their focus to what they still have: time, relationships, and moments of joy. There is a quiet strength in this habit. It is not loud or dramatic. It does not seek attention. It is the strength of someone who says, "This burden is no longer worth carrying." And the beauty of letting go is that it creates space. Space for new memories, space for peace, space for happiness. When the mind is not cluttered with past wounds, it becomes lighter, freer, and more open to the present. If you observe happy elders, you will notice this quality. They rarely dwell on old conflicts. They rarely bring up past grievances. Instead, they smile more, laugh more, and live more. The lesson here is simple but powerful. We do not have to wait for age to teach us this. We can choose even today to put the glass down. Because happiness is not found in holding on, it is found in letting go. Habit 2. They value relationships over ego. There was once a brother and sister who stopped speaking to each other over a small argument. Years passed. Festivals came and went, but silence remained. One day, the brother heard that his sister had fallen ill. He stood outside her door, hesitating. His ego whispered, "Why should you go first?" But his heart said, "What if it's too late?" People over 60 have lived through enough such moments to understand a painful truth: ego builds distance, while love builds connection. And when time passes, it is not the arguments we regret losing, it is the relationships. In younger years, ego often disguises itself as self-respect. We feel that apologizing makes us weak, that reaching out first means we are losing. So we wait. We expect the other person to take the first step. And in that waiting, relationships slowly fade. But elders begin to see things differently. They have witnessed how fragile life is. They have seen people leave unexpectedly, conversations end abruptly, and opportunities for reconciliation disappear forever. This awareness changes their priorities. They start valuing people over pride. You will often see older individuals making the first call, even when they were not entirely wrong. You will see them forgiving faster, not because they have forgotten the mistake, but because they value the relationship more than the need to be right. This shift is deeply transformative. It removes the constant tension of proving oneself. It replaces competition with compassion. It turns conflicts into opportunities for understanding rather than battles to be won. There is a beautiful story of an old couple who were married for over 50 years. When asked how they managed to stay together for so long, the husband smiled and said, "We were born in a time when if something broke, we fixed it, not replaced it." The same applies to relationships. Older people tend to fix relationships rather than discard them. They understand that every relationship has imperfections. No one is always right and no one is always wrong. What matters is the willingness to stay, to understand, and to grow together. And in doing so, they experience a deeper, more meaningful happiness, the happiness that comes from connection, belonging, and shared memories. Because at the end of the day, life is not about winning arguments, it is about keeping hearts close. Habit 3. They simplify life. A wealthy businessman once visited a small village and met an old man sitting peacefully under a tree. The businessman asked, "Why are you just sitting here? You could work harder, earn more money, build a business." The old man smiled and replied, "And then what?" The businessman said, "Then you can relax and enjoy life." The old man laughed softly, "But that is exactly what I am doing now." People over 60 often arrive at a profound realization. Life does not need to be complicated to be meaningful. In younger years, we chase complexity. More goals, more achievements, more possessions. We believe that happiness lies in accumulation. So we fill our schedules, our homes, and even our minds with excess. But over time, this constant pursuit becomes exhausting. Elders begin to see that not everything deserves their attention. Not every opportunity needs to be chased. Not every desire needs to be fulfilled. They start choosing carefully what to keep and what to let go. Their lives become simpler, but richer. They find joy in small, ordinary moments: a morning walk, a quiet cup of tea, a meaningful conversation. These are things younger people often overlook in their rush towards something bigger. Simplicity also brings clarity. When life is not cluttered with unnecessary distractions, it becomes easier to focus on what truly matters: health, relationships, peace of mind. There is less comparison, less pressure, and less noise. This does not mean they stop growing or learning. It simply means they become intentional. They invest their time and energy where it truly adds value. Interestingly, this simplicity often leads to greater satisfaction. When expectations are realistic and needs are minimal, it becomes easier to feel content. Happiness no longer depends on external achievements but arises from within. In contrast, younger generations often struggle because their lives are overloaded with information, responsibilities, and endless comparisons. The more they try to do, the less fulfilled they sometimes feel. The wisdom of elders teaches us an important lesson. More is not always better. Sometimes, less is more. A simpler life is not an empty life, it is a focused life. It is a life where each moment is experienced more fully, where each relationship is valued more deeply, and where peace is not postponed for the future but experienced in the present. And perhaps true happiness lies not in adding more to life, but in removing what is unnecessary. Habit 4. They stop comparing themselves. A young woman once told her, "Grandmother, everyone around me is doing better than me. They have better jobs, better lives, more success. I feel like I am falling behind." The grandmother listened quietly and then took her to the garden. Pointing at the flowers, she asked, "Do you see the rose comparing itself to the sunflower, or the sunflower trying to be the jasmine?" The young woman shook her head. "That is why they bloom so beautifully," the grandmother said. "They focus on being themselves." People over 60 slowly outgrow the habit of comparison, not because they are unaware of others, but because they understand its cost. In younger years, comparison often feels unavoidable. Social media, peer pressure, and societal expectations constantly remind us of what others have achieved. We measure our worth based on external standards, and in doing so, we lose sight of our own journey. But elders begin to realize that comparison is a never ending race with no finish line. There will always be someone richer, more successful, more accomplished. If happiness depends on being better than others, it will always remain out of reach. So they shift their perspective. Instead of looking outward, they start looking inward. They ask, "Am I at peace? Am I grateful? Am I living meaningfully?" These questions bring a different kind of fulfillment, one that is not dependent on others. They also begin to appreciate their own journey, the struggles they overcame, the lessons they learned, the relationships they built. Their sense of self worth becomes rooted in experience rather than comparison. Gratitude plays a big role here. When people focus on what they have rather than what they lack, their mindset changes. Life feels abundant rather than insufficient. This does not mean they stop growing or improving. It simply means their motivation comes from within, not from competing with others. You will often notice that happy elders celebrate others' success genuinely. They do not feel threatened or insecure. They understand that someone else's success does not diminish their own. This mindset creates emotional freedom. In contrast, constant comparison leads to stress, jealousy, and dissatisfaction. It keeps the mind restless and the heart heavy. The lesson is clear: happiness is not found in being ahead of others, but in being at peace with yourself. Just like the flowers in the garden, each of us has our own timing, our own path, and our own beauty. And when we stop comparing, we finally begin to bloom. Habit 5. They accept life as it is. A man once complained to an old sage, "Nothing in my life goes the way I want. Plans fail, people disappoint, and things keep going wrong." The sage handed him a piece of paper with a simple sentence written on it: "This too is part of life." At first, the man felt frustrated, but as years passed, he began to understand the depth of those words. People over 60 develop a powerful habit: acceptance. In younger years, we often resist reality. We want things to happen according to our plans, our expectations, our timeline. When they don't, we feel frustrated, anxious, even angry. We fight against situations, hoping to control what is often uncontrollable. But life has its own rhythm. Elders, through repeated experiences, begin to recognize this truth. They have seen plans fail despite their best efforts. They have experienced loss, change, and uncertainty. And slowly, they learn that resistance only increases suffering. Acceptance, on the other hand, brings peace. Acceptance does not mean giving up. It does not mean being passive or indifferent. It simply means acknowledging reality as it is, without unnecessary struggle. When something goes wrong, instead of asking, "Why me?" they ask, "What can I learn from this?" This shift in mindset reduces emotional turmoil and increases resilience. They also become more flexible. When life takes an unexpected turn, they adjust rather than resist. This adaptability allows them to navigate challenges with greater ease. There is a calmness in this approach. It removes the constant tension of trying to control everything. It creates space for patience, understanding, and growth. Younger generations often struggle because they expect life to be perfect or predictable. When reality does not match expectations, it leads to disappointment. But elders understand that life is a mix of ups and downs, joy and sorrow, success and failure. And instead of resisting this duality, they embrace it. This acceptance brings a deep sense of inner stability. It allows them to remain peaceful even in difficult situations. The lesson here is profound. We cannot always control what happens, but we can control how we respond. And sometimes the greatest strength lies not in changing the situation, but in accepting it gracefully. Because when we stop fighting reality, we start living it. Habit 6. They live more in the present moment. A grandfather was sitting with his grandson watching the sunset. The boy kept checking his phone, distracted and restless. After a while, the grandfather said, "You are here, but you are not really here." The boy looked confused. "You are thinking about what's next, what's missing, what you need to do," the grandfather continued. "But this moment, it will never come again." People over 60 often develop the ability to live more fully in the present moment. In youth, the mind is constantly moving, thinking about the future, worrying about outcomes, planning the next step. Or it is stuck in the past, regretting mistakes, replaying memories. Very rarely does it rest in the present. But elders begin to understand the value of now. They realize that life is not something that will happen someday, it is happening right here, right now. And if we are not present, we miss it. You will notice how they enjoy simple moments deeply: a conversation with a loved one, the taste of a meal, the beauty of nature. These are not extraordinary events, but they experience them fully. This presence brings a unique kind of happiness, one that is calm, steady, and fulfilling. It reduces anxiety because the mind is not constantly projecting into the future. It reduces regret because the focus is not on the past. It creates a sense of completeness in each moment. In contrast, younger generations often feel restless. Even when they achieve something, they immediately move to the next goal. There is little time to pause, reflect, or truly enjoy. Living in the present does not mean ignoring the future or forgetting the past. It simply means giving full attention to what is happening now. It is about being where you are. This habit transforms ordinary experiences into meaningful ones. It deepens relationships, enhances appreciation, and brings clarity. The grandfather watching the sunset was not doing anything productive, yet he was experiencing something priceless, and that is the wisdom of presence. Because life is not measured by how much we do, but by how deeply we experience it. And the present moment is where life truly exists.